Today, guys, we are going to be jumping off of
Yes. Welcome to another episode of Jumping Off Points. My name's Aidan. I'm here with Timbah. How you doing, Timbah?
Yes, Aidan. Very good, man.
Good stuff. Yeah, Timbah is here with us today, fresh off the back of his new YouTube video. How's it feel to get it out?
Yeah, man. I think it's sick. Like, I got so I released the new video, and I got I've got 84,000 views, which my subscribers is like 84,000. So I always think if I get the amount of views that is the same as my subscriber level, I've done pretty good, because that means I'm reaching at least some people outside.
Everyone's given it a go once.
Yeah. Everyone's at least giving me a shot on this vid. I actually bought like a new PC to be quicker at video editing and to do like more interesting stuff. And this new PC I found out this weekend can play games, which is obvious, but I've only just started doing it. So I was on Steam and I was looking at all the games I could buy. I was like, I could finally play like Persona 5 or GTA. And you know what I ended up buying?
Go on.
Age of Empires 4.
Sick. I used to love the Age of Empires games.
Well, it's literally a game that, and my mind just went, I'm on a computer. What was that? When I was last on a computer in like 1997, what was I playing? Maybe I'll just buy that same game, play the same. And it's literally the same. It's like you get a priest, you convert their units. Yeah. Like, you got cannons and stuff in the final age. It's pretty badass.
I think there is something very powerful about nostalgia when playing games, right? It's very hard to get into a whole new world in games, but if you used to play something, it's still kind of fun to play something that's very similar, right?
Well, also, it's ages since I've been doing that stuff, like, you know, building farms, having my villagers swarm in on the food there's bushes of berries at the start, and they give you more food per second than you would do making agricultural farms. So just relearning those strategies that I knew ages ago is sick. What are we talking about today, Aidan?
So it has been a tumultuous time in UK politics. Boris Johnson will go soon. I don't want to say he has gone, because he's still clinging on for dear life at the moment. But yeah, he has announced here that he will resign, and there is a leadership race in the Conservative Party to decide his successor. So we're going to be talking about what led up to the resignation, how the race has been so far, and then we're going to go into a bit more detail about the final two candidates, who are Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak.
Sick. And so with that, let's get into it.
Okay, so Boris Johnson's premiership had been in danger for a while.
Wait, did you just say premiership?
Yeah, that's the right word, isn't it?
Oh, is that the word? Okay. Sorry, I was rude then. You dumbass. This motherfucker said premiership. Well, we're not talking about football, bro. Get it together, Aidan. Yeah, sorry. If that's the right word, I apologize.
Boris Johnson's... I don't even know what the other word for that would be. I think that is right. Boris Johnson's like leadership. I can say leadership.
Yeah.
Boris Johnson's leadership had been in danger for a while now. Obviously, as we've covered on this podcast before, the Partygate scandal, which was basically that it was revealed that there were loads of parties in number 10 Downing Street during the COVID lockdowns. Then there was a confidence vote, which was Tory MPs making a play to oust him.
Which didn't work in the end. At the time, it felt like there was a lot of people who wanted him out of the party, and there was a significant number, but they just didn't reach the total they needed to for a no confidence vote. So that, like, Boris Johnson got out of that fine.
But at that time, so many of his own MPs voted against him, that it was clear that his days were numbered in a way, because he'd lost support of almost half of the party. It was like
it's easy to say that now that he's out.
No, but I think people were saying that at the time as well, because like more MPs voted against him than they did Theresa May and Margaret Thatcher, and they both went soon after those votes. So it's like, I think once something like that has happened, where so many people have been so confident that they want you out, that they vote against you, that it's over, really. Well, it's not over, but it's not looking good.
Now with hindsight, we can say his days were numbered. He had like 40 more days.
Yeah.
Because we know that like 40 days later, that was it.
He was gone.
So the thing that actually, I guess we could say the straw that broke the camel's back was a scandal involving a Tory MP called Chris Pincher. So this was a guy who Boris Johnson appointed to be the Deputy Chief Whip. That's a very important role. If you're Deputy Chief Whip in the Houses of Parliament, your job revolves around making sure that you've got all the votes you need to pass policies that are important to the cabinet. So this is someone who's going to have lots of contact with all the MPs in Parliament. You're going to have to be at the centre of every single discussion. And for that reason, I suppose there's a certain level of dignity attached to that post in particular if you are assuming the role. Now,
I think also importantly, their whips, they're kind of the HR department for their MPs as well. So they're supposed to be people that almost judge other people's behaviour and stuff. So if they act inappropriately, it's particularly bad, I think.
On 30th of June, the Sun newspaper broke the story that Pincher had inappropriately groped two men at a Tories member club, which in itself would be a scandal for Boris, one of many, and obviously relates to the, what are we calling it, sex pest gate or something?
I mean, I'm happy for us to coin that term now.
Like bare Tory MPs basically watching porn. I'm saying bare Tory MPs.
Oh, what? Pestminster. That was what
Pestminster,
it was.
Yeah. Sex pest gate, yeah. Pervert gate.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of scandals involving sleaze of Tory MPs being a bit skeevy and pervy. So this kind of links into that, and it would be a scandal in its own right. But when it dropped, Boris Johnson's office immediately said that Boris wasn't made aware, or wasn't aware at the time, that this MP, Chris Pincher, had been caught or had had allegations against him of groping men inappropriately at the Tories members club.
Chris Pincher had done this exact thing that he'd done before. So he literally did exactly the same thing of groping people before, right?
What it was found in the end was that Boris Johnson had been made aware of these allegations against Chris Pincher. Not only had he been made aware of the allegations, he knew that the allegations had resulted in the complaint being upheld, which means that they were found to be true. And Boris Johnson was briefed on this specifically ahead of appointing this guy as his deputy chief whip. It kind of unfolded over a course of days, didn't it, Aidan?
Yeah, it was a classic Boris Johnson scandal where first there's the lies and the deceit and the denial. And then as other people come to the table with information, the story changes every day. And then eventually, as you said, this was a straw that broke the camel's back, and Tory MPs were just sick of it.
On 5th of July, Rishi Sunak, who was the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and Sajid Javid, who was the Health Secretary, resigned. And then a whole tide of mass resignations begin. Literally by the hour, by the day, the amount of resignations was mounting.
I think eventually there were over 60, weren't there?
Yeah.
And hilariously, while in the midst of it all, the most crazy day where most of the resignations were coming in, Boris Johnson sacked Michael Gove at like 10 p.m. at night or something for disloyalty, because he'd been saying to him that the jig's up, you got to go. At that point, it was like, okay, this is getting wild. Boris Johnson just thrashing around, trying to like maintain his position, but it just looks crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone could be in Boris's position, even if they weren't Boris, and style that out.
He just doesn't believe in conceding defeat. You know, he once said that you'd have to send tanks in to remove him from number 10 Downing Street or something.
That's not true. We could send one police officer in and he'd go.
Yeah.
He's like, you'd have to GTA 5-star me to get me out of here. It's like one policeman comes like, Boris, can you go? He's like, oh, yes, okay, sorry. I didn't mean it. It's fight and talk.
Yeah, it was fight and talk, as it turned out.
So this was the end. And then we had a resignation speech from Boris, which is almost like it's an honoured British tradition at this point, at the end of a prime minister's reign, where they come out and they say, we've achieved loads. Sorry it didn't work out. My government is still sick. Keep voting for us. Which he did. So he didn't like viciously throw it back in the Tory member's face or anything. I guess he had no choice at this point.
His resignation speech was funny, though. He was taking no responsibility for anything.
From that speech, there was one particular clip that everyone homed in on as a fantastic piece of banter. It was a bit where Boris Johnson says, I didn't want to go, but them's the breaks. And
I don't want to be giving up the best job in the world, but them's the breaks.
And everyone honed in on this as like a kind of out of character phrase for a Tory to be using. We're going to play a clip of it now.
I know that there will be many people who are relieved, and perhaps quite a few who will also be disappointed. And I want you to know how sad I am to be giving up the best job in the world. But them's the breaks.
And then after this, there's a Twitter account I follow called, like, what? He's got some stupid handle.
DJ GJG.
DJ GJG. Okay. He's like a guy who's at the intersection of like the stuff I like on the internet, which is UK underground music and meme culture. And he put out a tweet with the clip of Boris Johnson's speech saying, "Jungle producers don't sample this challenge." The joke, for those of you who don't listen to underground music, is breaks are like, you know, when you listen to Jungle and it's like, and the drums are going super fast and there's like super crazy hi-hats trilling all over the place. That's a break.
Yeah, drums that are sampled from old records where they've just found just a bit of a drum break and looped it.
So basically, what he was saying was, better Jungle producers are going to be after this rarefied sample from Boris Johnson saying, "Them's the breaks." And then, obviously, in response to this tweet, we had better Jungle producers stepping up, just like throwing beats with him on them. I'll play one of them to you now, which I thought was particularly sick.
And I want you to know how sad I am to be giving up the best job in the world. But then is the break.
Yeah, man. Fucking hard. I thought that was sick.
Yeah, it's cool. My criticism of this is that, for me, clearly, everything needs to cut out and then say, "Them's the breaks," and then the drop comes in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Although I do like those little sims that go like, you know, the little LFO.
There's actually a big rift in mine and Aidan's friendship at the start, because he was very much a breaks guy and I was a non-breaks guy. So every single beat that Aidan made for that first 2 years of knowing each other had some sort of like at some point. But yeah, so like, yeah, we really enjoyed this niche joke on the internet. That was very sick.
Love to see Jungle getting a bit of recognition online. It's good.
Yeah, I mean, actually, Boris Johnson, underground jungle head since way back. That's why he put it in his speech. He got past that speech by Shy FX, Aidan. I don't know.
Maybe Boris Johnson is secretly part of Two Shell.
Would make a lot of sense with the meetings he's missed. Like,
that's so true. That is so true.
Weirdly, I've never seen Boris Johnson and Tuchel in the same place.
I think if we looked up the tour dates for Tuchel and looked up, you know, Boris Johnson's absences from Cobra meetings, we might be able to do a bit of sleuthing there.
Also, if you look at the graph of Jungle sales after Boris Johnson made that speech, man, he's being paid off by Big Jungle. I can't believe it.
I mean, he needs something to do now that he's given up the best job in the world.
Well, it's corruption at the very top, man. Big Jungle going around paying off our leaders to say breaks. Mad.
I'm all for it. You're just jealous because it wasn't like a grime person. Watch me pulse exit out of this job.
That's true. Pulse exit means pulse exit.
Oh my God.
Okay, so we can now talk about what happened next, which is Tory MPs having ousted the guy who everyone low-key knew was going to be ousted at some point. Now's the time to launch our own leadership bids so that we can take his place.
So the process for the leadership election is decided by the 1922 committee, who we've covered before. It's like their group of backbench MPs who aren't in the government. And basically they set up a system where MPs vote for their preferred candidate, and the candidates get basically knocked out one by one if they don't have enough votes to meet the minimum requirement, or if they're just the lowest ranked person in that round of voting. There was over 10 candidates at the start. A lot of them dropped out quite quickly because obviously you have to gather quite a lot of support from other MPs. And yeah, eventually we whittled it down to 2, and those 2 candidates are then voted on by the Conservative, the members of the Conservative Party. So weirdly, just a little tidbit here. The Conservative Party allow you to be a member, even if you don't live in the UK or if you're not a citizen here. And all of those people have a right to vote in this leadership election because they're not technically voting for the next prime minister. They're voting for the leader of their party. I imagine that there's not many people who are signed up from abroad, but it's just a weird fact that you could be.
I'd say maybe an influx of votes from the south of Spain.
Maybe,
If you've
yeah.
been there, there's British people and culturally conservative, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so through that process that Aidan described, we eventually whittled it down to 5 candidates. 2 of these candidates are Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, who we will talk about later, so just know that they are important. But we'll go through some of the others because I think there's some interesting points here which maybe show us a little bit about where the Tory MPs are at, because they're the ones who've been deciding up till this point who goes through. And also the different ways in which people are attempting to appeal to the Tory base and the wider public, who are inherently a part of this through having watched everything and being subject to what's going on in the media. So the first person I want to talk about is Penny Mordaunt. Very interesting because despite not being in the race currently, she was the favourite right out the gates. The main reason for this is that she wasn't part of Boris Johnson's government in a big way, in the same way that a lot of the other candidates were. So she's sort of been able to like just slip under the radar and just sort of like all the catastrophes and scandals that have affected all the rest by association. They're not really attached, or they're not stuck to Penny Mordaunt. She was one of the leading faces of the Leave campaign, and she has insisted that the benefits of leaving the EU are going to be huge, in spite of all contrary evidence we're seeing at the moment. Maybe it will be huge eventually. It's a long-term game.
Yeah, I was thinking she might actually win it because it looked like she was going to get through to the final 2, and it looked like she would be more popular with the members than Rishi Sunak.
Despite having such an early lead, Penny Mordaunt was eventually taken down by a mix of factors. One being her past statements on trans rights, which came off as being very pro-trans. And 2, there was a series of newspapers who were very, very ardently pro-Liz Truss. Daily Mail was one of them, and there were several other kind of right-leaning newspapers that were kind of launching attacks on Penny Mordaunt in the way of bringing to light all these like sort of U-turns on trans rights issues. And one of her close confidants eventually said they thought that those press attacks were what eventually cut through. So just to put some context on this, the comments that she made in 2018 were, trans women are women and trans men are men. This is the starting point for the GRA consultation, and it will be its finishing point too. We need to send a strong message out on that front. And then more recently, there is a clip of her very assertively responding to a press journalist saying the following.
I'm a woman. I am biologically a woman. And I can tell you, Chris, that if you have been in the Royal Navy and you have competed physically against men, you understand the biological difference between men and women.
I think this really highlights a very depressing thing about this leadership race, is that obviously the people who are members of the Conservative Party, who are the only people who get to vote, are all very right-wing. But there's only 180,000 of them. And the UK, the number of people registered in the UK to vote is 47 million. So the next Prime Minister is being chosen by 0.38% of the electorate or something. So it's not only is it not representative of what the country wants, it's also that they're a very particular type of person who wants very right-wing social talk. Yeah, it just really highlights how these politicians have had to pander to their very right-wing base in order to become the next Prime Minister. Another one of the final 5 candidates for the leadership race was Tom Tugendhat. He's like an ex-army guy, and he was seen to be slightly more on the left of the party than some of the other candidates, which obviously meant he had absolutely no chance of winning.
What an idiot.
Yeah, but and so he was someone that, because he wasn't in Boris Johnson's government and because he was sort of appealing to a slightly different part of the party, was quite critical of Boris Johnson and was happy to say that he thought Boris Johnson was not honest. Which many of the other candidates struggled to do.
There was a debate where each candidate was asked in turn, is Boris Johnson honest? And they gave a wriggly, squirmy, like, he's kept his commitments on many things. I think there were some things he could have done better, which he has admitted himself, blah, 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 like about 100-word salad, with each candidate. It got to Tom Tugendhat and they were like, is Boris Johnson honest? And he was like, no.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was the only chance of us getting someone who was relatively normal.
Yeah.
But it's weird saying that he's on the left of the party because I think it makes it evident like how far Tory politics have shifted to the right, because even he was, I don't know, not totally drawing a line with the policies.
Well, I would say, for example, like when they asked the question in the debates about, are you committed to the climate agreement of 2050? His answer to that was, I will invest in nuclear, I will do this, I will do that. I don't think there's a need to keep to agreements if they don't make sense anymore. So, even on the, he's definitely not left wing.
And I think he was still up for Rwanda and everything, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, of course. In a way, his respectability was exuded more from the way he acted, how he spoke, than his policies. Just very briefly, we then had Suella Braverman.
She announced her leadership bid, I think, before Boris Johnson had officially resigned. She was like the first one out of the gate, so to speak. And to be honest, I didn't see loads about her during the race, but the one thing I did see was a clip of her doing like old school Tory politics about benefit claimants, saying something along the lines of they're all lazy or something.
The other thing that she did was she was one of the main ones attacking Penny Mordaunt. She said Penny's really, she wanted to put gender neutral language in this bill that I was part of, and so she was launching quite a lot of the attacks. So she got in early with her bid. She launched a load of attacks and then she died. So it was
and she actually had a lot of support from the real right wing part of the party. There was a sort of period of time at the start where people were worried that, supporters of Liz Truss was worried that she wouldn't get through to the final two because Suella Braverman had captured a significant portion of that real right-wing part of the party, because she used to be the chair of the European Research Group, which is like this sort of Machiavellian group of MPs who sort of manipulate Tory policy to make it as right-wing as possible, as far as I understand.
So she was kamikaze in and out. Loved it. The last person who made it to the final five is someone called Kemi Badenoch. Is it Badenoch?
I don't know if it's Badenoch or Badenoch.
Badenoch. Sorry, Kemi, if we got your name wrong. Apologies. But she was an interesting candidate for me in the sense that she was the furthest right out of the whole group. So further right than Suella Braverman, in my opinion. Further right than Liz Truss is trying to steer into. And that's for a reason. So Kemi actually got a start running digital operations for the right-leaning Spectator magazine. So she's very clued into culture war issues, the sort of language that's prevalent on Facebook and on Twitter in terms of those right-wing spheres and the kinds of right-wingers those spaces tend to cultivate.
Also, Kemi Badenoch was very, very popular with the Conservative base all the way through. So like whenever there was polling done of the Conservative members, she was always the one that came out on top. And I think, like you say, because she knew how to spin that anti-woke messaging, and people felt like she was quite authentic about it, I think, because obviously she's probably spent her whole life talking about it.
This is the other thing. So there's one side of that, which is saying sort of making vacuous statements that have no bearing on policy, and then also not declaring any policies. So free markets and tax cuts was all we got from her, without any articulation of how this would happen. I think what she's probably gained from this is that she is now, first of all, her name's on the map with everyone. She's also maybe more in the running for a cabinet position than she would have been before.
I would put money on her getting a cabinet position next, especially if Liz Truss wins.
Minister for Equality that is going to be her, for sure.
I can see her getting a big job, to be honest. We'll obviously have to see, but I can see her getting a bigger job, because obviously if a lot of the Tory base really like her, it'll be a popularity boost for whoever wins the leadership contest at the next election, won't it? You could be able to say I've got Kemi doing whatever. So the race has been deliciously vicious. It's been amazing to see them absolutely tear into each other. The very first thing that we saw happen was someone leaked. Oh, maybe they weren't. Maybe they didn't leak it. Even leaked. Some
little archiving nerd.
Yes, found a clip of Rishi Sunak. It was in like a reality TV show about middle class people or something, wasn't it?
It was like a young, dumb and living off mum, but more smart as a TV show.
Yeah. And it was him as I don't know how old he is in the clip, like
So
maybe 18 or 19.
Yeah, like student age because he was at Oxford.
Yeah. And he's basically just talking about, he's trying to make the point that he has a very diverse set of friends, but he ends up saying that he doesn't know any working class people, which is just an amazing like own goal when you're trying to make the opposite point.
Are we gonna listen to this one?
Yeah,
let's have a listen to it.
I have friends who are aristocrats, I have friends who are upper class, I have friends who are, working class, but I'm not working class, but I mix and match, and then I go to see kids from an inner city state school and tell them, to apply to Oxford and talk to them about people like me, and then I shock them at the end of chatting to them for half an hour and tell them I was at Winchester, and, one of my best friends is from Eton or whatever, and...
If this guy came to my school when I was there and started talking about telling people to apply for Oxford, no one would be fucking surprised to learn that he went to Winchester because he's so fucking posh.
Yeah. In a way, I feel like him saying maybe not working class people is actually very honest.
Oh yeah.
And I think people have seized upon this as this thing of like, oh, he's got no working class friends. Oh, he's so posh. Oh, he doesn't get. But actually, well, no. In the moment, he could have said, "I have a diverse group of friends," and just lied. And he was like, "Oh, I have working class. Oh, I don't have working class friends."
Also, I think it's very likely that almost none of these contenders have working class friends. Do you know what I mean? It's just the fact that he actually said it.
Yeah, like the circles you run in as a politician generally are about 2 social notches above the average middle class person.
Yeah.
The viciousness that Aidan talked about earlier was on full display when we were seeing the debates. So we saw this general strategy of all the MPs who were not Rishi Sunak ganging up on Rishi Sunak because he was the one with the most MP votes in the party. So they were all attacking him on the fact that he hadn't committed to tax cuts, which all the rest of them, to some degree or another, had. And Rishi Sunak was sort of responding, fending off all these attacks in turn by saying, my goal is keeping things realistic. We can't have tax cuts at a time when inflation's at an all-time high. You guys are living in a fairy tale.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that, I don't know if it was the actual candidates or like people who were supporting them, but some of them called Rishi Sunak a socialist, which is just hilariously wrong.
Yeah, anything goes though, doesn't it? It's just if you can make it stick.
Yeah.
We also had like Penny Mordaunt, so very, very funny now because she's fully riding the Truss train. She's on board with Liz Truss.
She's publicly backed her now, hasn't she?
Yeah, she said, that's my girl. That's, girl power. We're doing this together. She was like very viciously attacking Liz Truss throughout the campaign. She said like Liz Truss was part of Boris Johnson's government. I wasn't. We need a fresh start. I don't think we can entrust someone who's already been part of the corruption to run the country.
There was a lot of coverage about how brutal Liz Truss's briefings were about Penny Mordaunt.
Mm.
And I think it was clearly because the battle was between those two to get into the final 2 with Rishi Sunak because he was sort of the clear winner.
So direct quote from a member of Penny Mordaunt's campaign. Liz Truss will not be able to win a general election and will put MPs' seats at risk. And now she's saying, vote for this person in the general election.
Yeah. So the final 2 is Liz versus Rishi. It's almost like a kind of crazy wrestling match or something.
One's got a knife, one's got a chainsaw.
Yeah.
Actually, no, that makes it seem like right. I don't think it's uneven like that. Actually, no, it is. Liz Truss has a chainsaw.
Yeah.
Rishi has a knife.
Yeah.
Rishi also has height advantage and reach, so he could maybe, her chainsaw.
He's actually quite a short man, though.
Is he?
I think so. Yeah.
I thought of him as quite tall.
Let's get an exact height.
Oh, I think part of his campaign is saying he's tall, and I've fallen for the propaganda.
Oh, okay. He's 1.7 meters tall.
What's that in feet for the normal people who don't do things in meters?
Okay, I'm gonna have to actually convert it myself.
Because the big question for me is like, I'm 5'10". Is this guy taller or shorter than me?
He's 5'5".
Oh my god, he's as short as fuck.
He's short, yeah.
He's the shortest guy I've ever. Oh no, he's not the shortest guy I've ever. How tall are you, Aidan? You're like 6 foot.
Yeah, I'm like 6'3", 6'4".
Oh my god, you're really tall. I didn't think of you as that tall, and I thought of Rishi as really tall. I've got all my world priorities wrong.
But and interestingly, he's only 3 centimeters taller than Nadine Dorris.
Wait. Keep that measurement up. Let's see how tall Liz Truss is. Height in feet. Liz Truss is 5 feet 3 inches.
Oh, so he's got 2 or 3 inches on her.
But neither of them are getting on the Pepsi Max.
On the Pepsi Max?
The roller coaster at Blackpool.
I love that it's a branded partnership. It's just called the Pepsi Max. Is that right?
Oh yeah, it's a roller. I don't know why. It's a roller coaster that takes you really high, and all it is a big. It's a bit like Oblivion at Alton Towers, but less vertical. Like really big rise up and really big drop. I
wouldn't be surprised if we start to see, height restrictions at theme parks being described as woke nonsense in the next in the next government.
Mate, if my baby wants to ride the Pepsi Max, who are you to say that she can't? This is ridiculous. So let's go through Liz versus Rishi. I think we're going to talk a little bit about the race, but understand that the race between Liz and Rishi is a sort of porridge of the last 2 weeks. That is a flurry of them making policies, changing them, ducking and weaving in between each other and trying to appeal to the Tory electorate, which, there's a chronology which goes on day 1, this happened, on day 2, that happened, is completely useless to us here. So we're going to go through their policies, or what policies we know of from what they've said. And then I think we'll probably do the analysis of what we think afterwards, right, Aidan?
Yeah, for sure. Liz Truss, weirdly, has positioned herself more on the right of the pie than Rishi Sunak has. Although, to be honest, if we were looking at any other leadership race, these two candidates would be very close together. But Liz Truss has weirdly become the sort of pro-Brexit candidate, even though she campaigned for the Remain campaign and has only since changed her mind and now says it's a great idea.
And Rishi was vote leave, ardently.
He was like a bit of an up-and-comer. I think he was George Osborne's little protege, and he quit his job at a time when it wasn't politically expedient to do so in order to campaign for leave. So, he really did put himself on the line because he wanted it.
Yeah, and we've got a clip from Andrew Neil here, who talks about this strange phenomenon we're witnessing.
It is somewhat ridiculous that Liz Truss, who voted to remain in the Brexit referendum, is regarded as the staunch Brexiteer, and Rishi Sunak, who voted to leave and had always been a leaver, is regarded with suspicion as a closet Remainer. So I think that is a bit strange, but I think that speaks to Liz Truss positioning herself as the insurgent. Therefore, Brexiteers are associated with insurgents, and Rishi Sunak is more the establishment Conservative candidate, and the Conservative establishment was by and large for Remain. So I think that's what is being reflected there.
So what we can see with this Brexit thing, it's a lot about show. Obviously, Liz is cutting through with bravado and performance.
She's saying that she'll rewrite the Northern Ireland Protocol, and I think Rishi Sunak has taken a more reasonable approach and saying that's quite a crazy thing to do, and she wants to leave the ECHR, which is the European Court of Human Rights, which we discussed last time.
So tied into that, we have the issue of immigration, which is obviously a very important one to Conservative voters. I think it often comes high on the list. It wouldn't be as high as economic priorities, but up there. Both candidates are basically trying to one-up each other in terms of, I'm tougher on immigration. No, you're not. I am. As part of that, both of them have committed to continue the Rwanda policy. Liz, on top of that, has committed to making several other agreements like it with different countries around the world. If you'd like to hear more about the Rwanda policy, check out our episode on it. The short headline of the Rwanda policy is, no immigrants have been sent there yet. It's not economically effective to do, and it's unworkable.
It took a long time to get this Rwanda thing in place, and they were trying to find countries that they could strike a deal with for ages. The idea that there's just loads of other countries who are willing to do this deal, I just don't think is true.
Notably, in this area of immigration, Sunak had, I guess you could describe it at this point as a misstep. He's not backed off the policy, but he mentioned that he would have an immigration plan that saved money on the hotel cost we pay to house asylum seekers, and he'd house some asylum seekers on cruise ships. I think he didn't mention cruise ships as the lead of this policy, but he said it as part of it. Like, part of our plan will revolve on housing them on cruise ships. That has gone down terribly because everyone's like, well, that's health and safety risk. For one, it's probably going to be more expensive cost to house them there. It kind of offsets their hotel cost, but then just creates a new one.
We've also seen Liz Truss returning to this idea of pushing boats back in at sea. Well, as they're traveling from France, push them back so they can't land here, which was abandoned by Boris Johnson because it was seen to be so dangerous. I mean, if you've seen the clips of these people being rescued out at sea, if you push them back, people are going to die.
That's inevitable.
Inevitable, yeah.
The problem is that the way they sell those policies is we're doing a good act. You know, we're trying to save lives by stopping people from crossing the ocean. What does it say about those policies if you're just pushing them back into the ocean where they're going to die?
Yeah.
It undercuts your whole bid for humanity.
But it is, again, highlighting this thing of like, they just need to say the most right-wing shit possible to win this contest.
It's true, yeah. So now on to the economy.
It's been the part of this contest that's had the most coverage, I think, because it's the most pressing issue for the country. I think because Rishi Sunak was obviously in the Treasury as the Chancellor, he has a very strong view of what should happen, and everyone else has been attacking him for that view. So Rishi Sunak has basically run his whole campaign on not cutting taxes at this moment because of how high inflation is. So I think inflation's like, it's above 10%. Like, it's gone up even faster than we mentioned that it might when we covered it like on this podcast before. And if you cut taxes, that basically releases loads more money into the economy. And then people have more money to go out and spend. So people put the prices up. So
the whole problem of inflation is too much money chasing too few goods.
Yeah. Rishi Sunak increased our national insurance contributions, which is like a tax that is kind of like another income tax that we pay.
It helps fund the NHS, right?
It helps fund the NHS. So it was a 1.25% rise. And it's long-term supposed to be for adult social care. But in the short term, it's being used to fund the NHS, to provide additional funding for the NHS. And so Liz Truss has said that she wants to get rid of this. And Rishi Sunak is saying that we need to do it because we need more funding for the NHS, which is completely true because there's a huge backlog at the NHS right now. Like, if you're trying to get an appointment, it takes ages. So Liz Truss wants to get rid of that one. She also wants to cancel the planned increase in corporation tax, which is set to come in next year, which is supposed to go up from 19% to 25%. And she also wants to get rid of the green levy on energy bills. So this is money that is taxed on energy bills to invest in new green energy projects. Basically, what she wants to do is continue to provide that same money to the services that it's ring-fenced for all of these tax cuts. But she wants to get that money from borrowing it, which is an issue because obviously we'll have to pay that money back. And with interest rates rising, the cost of borrowing that money will only increase. Liz Truss is like, it doesn't matter how much it costs to do the tax cuts. If you do it, you'll increase growth and that will pay for itself. Like, most economists would not agree with that argument. The dividends aren't always passed on to normal people.
Or rather, they're often passed on to the people at the top end who aren't struggling. If you take someone who's poor and cut their tax, are they rich now? Obviously not.
Well, also, the most poor people don't pay tax because they're not earning enough to meet the threshold.
Yeah.
You only start paying tax once you earn 12 grand or something a year, and then everything above that gets taxed. If you only earn 15 grand a year, you're only getting taxed on 2 grand of it. If you earn 100 grand a year, you're getting taxed on like 90 grand of it. So tax cuts are much more beneficial for people at the top end of the spectrum than they are at the bottom.
Yeah, and this whole thing revolves around, public services, doesn't it? Tax has to fund those, and they benefit everyone. So, yeah, that exemplifies the struggle here between Rishi Sunak's economic view and Liz Truss's. And obviously, the whole thing is coloured by the fact that they have to signal tax cuts to the Tory members. Even if they don't agree with them, they have to. Sunak has also, I think as a result of this, U-turned on his no tax cuts thing to a certain extent. He is cutting VAT tax on energy bills now, which is something that he never said previously.
He's ran basically his whole campaign on not doing tax cuts, and then very recently has said that he'll do this. And it kind of does make sense because it's like a temporary tax cut that he says that the government can already afford to do. So it's not like an unfunded one, which has been his issue with Liz Truss's proposed tax cuts. But yeah, it looks quite desperate because it's obvious that he knows how far behind he is in the polls and that how popular the idea of tax cuts is with the Tory base. So yeah, it's been it's a bit of a desperate move, I think.
So linked into all of this talk about the economy and inflation and tax cuts is the looming problem of the energy crisis that the UK are facing. So we are set to see energy bills rise by proportions that we've never seen before. Now, in a climate where you're talking about tax cuts, you're not talking about the energy crisis. Obviously, some of their tax cuts have gone towards addressing people's energy bills. But the actual problem of the energy crisis is that it's external to the UK and the poorest members of our society are just not going to be able to pay them. So one of the things that economists have said that what we could actually do to curb this is direct support to people. So increasing universal credit for those who are on the lowest incomes and raising the existing energy bill rebate from £400 to £600 for 11 million lower income households. Now, that's what some economists are saying to curb this problem. But that is a handout, or that is how Tory members see that. If you're giving a rebate, it's a handout. No, don't give handouts to people. Cut taxes.
Yeah, and it was Liz Truss called it a handout, didn't she? Well, she said she won't be doing handouts. Yeah, I think this is a weird one because it's maybe the biggest example of the Tory membership being really at odds with what will win a general election. Most people who are going to vote will want support of their energy bills. I just don't believe that whoever wins this contest will be able to not give any support because the overwhelming public opinion will be that they need to do something about it. Now that we're down to the final two, they're doing hustings with Tory members. They're basically just campaigning. And Liz Truss put out a press release which was about saving money on public sector employment costs. The headline is that she was planning to change the rules about people being paid depending on where they live. And it would have meant, if it had gone through, that people in poorer areas, such as the north of England, would be paid less for doing the same job as someone in a richer area. Obviously, this caused outcry immediately, partly because it was such a rejection of Boris Johnson's levelling up agenda, and partly just because it was a dumb idea. Yeah, and she basically had to U-turn on this very quickly. It might have even been the same day the press release went out.
It was either on the day or the next day, and they said current levels of public sector pay will absolutely be maintained. This is from someone in her campaign.
Yeah.
Anything to suggest otherwise is simply wrong.
Yeah.
And then, so this was, they've started it out like, oh, we never meant that, but they clearly did. It was a U-turn.
Well, the policy that I put forward was misrepresented. And I wanted to make sure that our important frontline workers like doctors and teachers weren't worried. That's why I cancelled the policy. I did it straight away. I was decisive and I was honest with the public about what I was doing.
She basically made out that people who were saying that she was going to cut public sector pay were willfully misrepresenting her policy, and which is not true. I've seen it, like they were reporting exactly what it said in the press release.
So she was pushed back on that one. Even more recently than that, a clip has surfaced on Twitter from one of these like inner Tory party member meetings where Rishi Sunak is speaking to what looks like a crowd of old age pensioners, no offense. And he's basically saying, you guys, I made sure that the money that was meant to go to the deprived areas of urban parts of the country has come here instead. And he's in a place called Tunbridge Wells, which is, I think it's been voted the nicest place to live in England. It's one of the richest.
Oh, really?
It's one of the richest areas in the whole country. So we're just going to play you this clip.
I managed to start changing the funding formulas to make sure that areas like this are getting the funding that they deserve. because we inherited a bunch of formulas from the Labour Party that shoved all the funding into deprived urban areas. Then that needed to be undone. I started the work of undoing that.
So when I saw this, all I could think of was, oh, he might actually become the leader now.
I think it's too late for him. I think it's now got to the point where anything that happens is seen as further confirmation that he's going to lose. Like, I think now the way people will interpret this is, oh, look, he's made another blunder, not he's doing something that I want.
Yeah.
He's fucked up again.
It is a horrible look into what goes on at private Tory members clubs.
Yeah, obviously he said that what he was actually saying was that there's deprivation everywhere that needs to be addressed.
The amount of deprivation in the nicest place to live in England is going to be less than the deprivation in one of the worst places to live. Which is the urban, it's the urban areas he's talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, loved that from Rishi. Absolutely loved it.
So it's getting more and more heated. We are coming into the end of it though. Do we know when it ends? We probably don't even have that offhand, do we?
It'll basically be wrapped up by the 5th of September because that's when the House of Commons returns after the summer recess. And then on the 6th of September, Boris Johnson will go to the Queen to officially resign and the next Prime Minister will be sworn in.
Yeah, cool. And the Queen will be like, "Them's the breaks." Paid off by Big Jungle too. So there was this, we wanted to talk about this. There was the whole race has been bad for Tories, hasn't it? In terms of their image, in terms of what it says about them as people and their character.
There's been an acknowledgement from both sides of the usual political spectrum of left and right that this race has been particularly vicious. And that is not great for the Tories because them attacking each other and saying how bad things have become under the government is a great way to attack the next Prime Minister because they have been part of that government. So them saying they want to do a lot of new policies that haven't been done before is like saying there was an issue with what's been going on before. There were messages from a WhatsApp group of Tory MPs were shared with a journalist and they were complaining about this. So one said, "The division, smears and personal attacks have been disgraceful. Nothing will kill our party more than blue on blue." And Labour's national campaign coordinator, Shabana Mahmood, said that this leadership race was providing them with a wealth of material that they would fulsomely take advantage of the Tories trashing their own record.
You know what's mad about this race? Is that they're all fighting viciously to try and assume what I would consider to be the worst job in the world. Like, you want to come and be Prime Minister of a country that's heading towards the biggest recession we've seen in a decade. And you've got all the problems of the previous government, which you're going to have to take responsibility for. And you've announced all these policies, which you're going to have to in some way do in order to not look like a massive liar.
Yeah.
Like, why on earth would you want this job?
Yeah, maybe the mindset is you just do whatever it takes to get into power and then you sort out all the other shit. But whoever comes into power now is going to be inherently unpopular because there are so many tough decisions to make. People don't like politicians that have to make tough decisions.
Yeah, well, I just think politicians are kind of built different. Like, you and me, we look at this, we're like, oh, how would I deal with this like massive stress? They're just like, maybe to them, the honor of being Prime Minister is so great that all the rest of it is immaterial.
Yeah. It's the desire to be Prime Minister is higher than anything
Trumps
else.
Everything else.
Yeah. I don't fancy it, mate, to be honest.
Nah. I would just, I'd be doing like doodle polls all the time. And what do you actually want, guys? And they'd be like, they're voting all different ways. I'm like, oh, you've all screwed it up by wanting different things. I can't do anything. My hands are tied now. Sorry.
I just think, it would ruin your weekend as well. You'd have no
chill
time.
God. Because you gotta be on call for all the random stuff that occurs, and then people are like, "Oh, you going out raving, are you? While the country is hungry?" And I'm like, "Oh God, I can't do anything then."
Yeah, doesn't sound great.
Yeah, it does not.
Okay, last point of the podcast. Who are you backing for Prime Minister?
Bro, I am riding with Rishi. I'm a Sunak super fan. I think
you're ready for Rishi.
I think that guy is out of the two candidates on offer, my guy. From Rishi, I think I've seen a much more consistent policy vision in terms of saying, right, the big problem at the moment is inflation. That is undeniably the truth. That is the fact of the matter. And I'm going to pursue policies that decrease inflation. They might not be popular. They might take a long time to actually kick in, but fiscally, economically, these have been balanced up. And he stuck to that for a long time until he had to throw out red meat to the base. So I think, personally, he's the one that should lead us. So that's what I would say.
I agree. I think Liz Truss, some of the things that she's suggesting are ridiculous, to be honest. Like leaving the European Court of Human Rights would be completely mental. I do think that all the tax cuts are not well thought out. Yeah, I think Rishi is more of a sensible choice, but it is a depressing choice because I think they're both terrible.
Okay, well, I think that wraps it up. So, for everyone who's listened, thank you so much for joining us. We always love having a time to talk about politics, UK stuff, and voice our thoughts on lots of issues that are above and beyond our control to change. Especially with the Tory race. I mean, I wish I'd joined the Tory party 4 years ago so I could ride with Rishi properly.
Yeah, well, it's a shame you missed out on that one, bud.
Yeah, next time I could join the Tory party now, innit?
Yeah, I don't know. Do you know if you join now, would you be able to vote? No, because ballots have already gone out.
Surely not, because they'd get massive influxes of people coming in and voting, wouldn't they? Yeah, there must be some sort of rule about that. But yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you could turn up. You could join the Tory party, and then you turn up to the member meetings and suggest loads of dumb shit that you're really ardent about.
Left-wing policies.
Guys, let's nationalise the railways.
Nationalise the railways. Yeah. Not nationalising the railways is woke nonsense. That's all you have to say. Thanks for listening. This has been...
What, are you going to cut off from the banner? Yeah, I suppose, yeah. It's time we should do the outro, yeah. Go on, say it. To thank them for listening.
Yeah, no, thanks for listening. They might have a bit of a longer break between this episode and the next one because someone is getting married.
Yeah, I'm getting married, so I need to take time for my honeymoon and planning the wedding. So it could be, we're looking at, so this will be our August one. So maybe September we dip and then October we're back. Yeah,
I'm sure that our fans will be very disappointed that we're not keeping up with our already very irregular posting schedule.
Those 4 commenters are like, what? What the fuck? 2 months?
Yeah.
Anyway, stay with us. Very nice to speak to you again, and join us for the next one in a bit.
Jumping off the... Jumping off the...